because it's a therapist conversation, not a friend conversation, right?
You can only run, but for so long, it's going to always come up.
And you can recognize where people are, but it doesn't mean it's your responsibility to guide that, to navigate that, to be a witness to that.
There could be a person who has all the potential in the world, and you see it, and everyone else around them sees it.
A lot of that is figuring that out in the beginning. Are we on the same page? Are we in the same place in our lives?
Welcome back to the Red Report podcast. And today we're going to be having some conversations on dating, relationships, communication, and self-growth. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right in. You can be emotionally mature and still choose someone who isn't.
It's possible where you are at a certain emotional maturity level and you may see glimmers of another individual of their potential. But then that's the risk. You're dating potential, not dating where that person actually is. So it's not that you can't date that individual, but you have to keep in mind that there is going to be an additional level of patience and understanding, knowing that they have to get to that point that you're at. And not try to change or force a person to get to that point. That's something that they're going to have to get to on their own.
Yeah, and I would just want to emphasize on the word choose, right? Like you get the choice. You can choose. Sometimes we choose the most unhealthiest relationships, and sometimes we choose the best relationships for us. But I think, when it comes to something like this, there's a lot of what you said, which is when you see someone's potential, because no one's perfect. And I think we know that just because we don't feel perfect a lot of the times, and we reflect that on ourselves. So our choices are important. And I think that that's part of it too, is that emphasis on the word choose. You choose.
I'll also contribute that emotional maturity is not a thing. It's not a one thing. I have reached it. There's no one point in time where we're growing and we're learning that you reach that. And so we're always a work in progress. And so you might be emotionally mature on how you process your emotions, but you're not really aware of your patterns on partner selection. And so, this whole growth thing is really, really hard. That's why a lot of people don't do it, right? Is because we have to look at kind of all facets of our life, our work environment and work relationships, our romantic and our friendships. And so where we might be strong in one, we may be up and coming and growing and learning in others. And so it's really important to know where you are in all of those facets so that you can do the work and choose and select a partner that not only has more potential, but also is willing to do the work. There can be a person who has all the potential in the world, and you see it, and everyone else around them sees it, but they don't see it because they don't love themselves or they don't believe in themselves.
Right.
And so to do this hard work is a commitment. And so if they're not committed to themselves, it's unfortunate. They really can't ever be committed to you or anyone else.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I also think, to piggyback on that, it's actually very close to what I was going to say, which is that it's also tied to self-esteem. And I have personal experience with this, but I think a lot of it comes back to you choose what you think you deserve. And that doesn't necessarily tie itself to being an emotionally mature person. You can be emotionally mature and still choose somebody who you think or you're romanticizing as where you want them to be or for a partner you're looking for, while also realizing that maybe it actually isn't the best fit, or it's somebody who maybe isn't as far along as you thought they were, but you're choosing it based on, wanting connection. Everyone longs to be loved. And I think sometimes that causes you to force something, even if they're not where you are.
Yeah. Talking about potential, I think a lot of times we give folks grace, we give them kindness, we give them time and bits of our lives to figure out who they are and to meet themselves at a place where you think they could meet themselves. And in doing so, we abandon ourselves at times and we leave ourselves behind and we put ourselves in a box in order to allow that person to grow, right? And so I think when it comes to emotional maturity, you can feel good about yourself and be one with yourself, but that doesn't mean that you don't have gaps in terms of maybe discernment. Being able to make a decision and say, I recognize this person has potential, but it doesn't mean I have to wait, right? And you can recognize where people are, but it doesn't mean it's your responsibility to guide that, to navigate that, to be a witness to that. And I think that when we move in dating, it's really important to date someone based on who they are in that moment. If you need constant reassurance in dating, you're not ready for a relationship.
It's funny because like I hear you say that and I'm like gut punch because like I sometimes am in that state where I need constant reassurance. And I feel like, with the person that I'm dating now, they're really helpful in this way. I think when you find the right person, you tend to like stop needing that reassurance. But my need of reassurance right now comes from trauma that I have from past relationships where, I was cheated on or, I was told that I was ugly or fat or whatever, like all these different things or ignored and gaslit, right? So when you go through those experiences, especially when you're in a new relationship, sometimes that kind of ends up happening where you need that level of reassurance. And I think it's for people who, like myself, have gone through a lot, that reassurance is a way of building trust. But I think after you've built that trust, if reassurance is continually something that is needed over time, that you got to do the inner work yourself. Right. And I mean, in the process, I am doing the inner work myself and recognizing, okay, this person isn't my ex, right? Or exes. This person is this person. And I have to really reflect on that and, also tell myself, well, who cares what they say? Let them say that I'm ugly or fat. Like if that's the case, then they're not my person. Right. And so it's a movement that you do together, I think, as a couple. And so I think you can be prepared to date if you still need that level of reassurance and are in that process of healing, but you have to actively be self-aware that the reassurance that you need is to build trust and not from a place of, I need this reassurance every day so that I can feel loved and whole.
I also don't, I was going to say, sometimes we tie that to insecurity, but sometimes I think it's just tied to how people receive love. And
Absolutely.
I also think that can be tied to your personality. I think that some people just need words of affirmation.
That's true.
I'm a words person. So if I don't, somebody cleaning my apartment may not have the same effect as somebody telling me that I clean up nice or I'm handsome or whatever the case is, right? So
Yeah.
it doesn't have, I think that it carries different weight for different people.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a difference between needing those words and also maybe begging for those words and asking for that all the time.
Yes.
I think that those are two very different things. And someone who's in two very different places in their life or maybe in a situation to be in a relationship. I also don't think it's so hard to put people in boxes. Because to Rachel's point, I think everyone's on their own journey and at a different place than other people. And maybe those things mean different things. But also, I just think some people just, like to hear those things. It's nice to have that. But also, I think that we can't necessarily, tie that to not being ready to be in a relationship.
Right.
Just because I think everyone has things to work on. And I think that part of being in a relationship, obviously, is going on that growth journey together and working through those things together. So again, back to what you were saying with the last question, it's meeting people where they are. And sometimes people that's something they're going to either need to continue to work on within the confines of a relationship, or they're just somebody who loves to hear positive things, hear, good words.
Yeah. I definitely am a words of affirmation girly, so that makes so much sense what you're
I'm
saying.
words of affirmation as well.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably my number one.
It's my number one. Yeah. I would say when it comes to the reassurance piece, I think, Rachel, to what you said, when you're with the right person, I think it just works because, something you both had said in regards to begging. I think there are times when you're with the right person and they naturally love you the way that you want to be loved.
Yeah.
And so having someone say, hey, you look really beautiful today, or hey, I love you, or hey, I'm just going to consistently tell you how I feel about you so you never have to ask.
Yeah.
That is a really nice feeling. And I think if you have to beg, I think that just comes down to compatibility.
Agreed.
And it's really, really disheartening when you have to spoon feed someone on how to love you. so that you're not constantly in a place of anxiety or keeping your nails done because you don't know what's about to shake up?
So when you asked the question, I immediately thought of how people form connections, right? And the theory behind connections is children, right? Those attachment style. And so someone who constantly seeks kind of that affirmation, I guess, breaks down to an attachment for me. And I guess I think of it as the person on the other side when you ask the question, not the one needing the affirmation, but the one on the other side where affirmation is always needed. That can be exhausting if I don't speak that language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to me, it comes down to communication. So you said something which is like, we need and want people who love us the way we need to be loved and wanted. I think that comes down to communication.
Okay.
I cannot expect you to love me the way in which I need to be loved unless I communicate that to you.
Exactly.
So
Absolutely.
this is part of the vetting process of a partner. And it's, hey, I come with a little baggage.
Yeah.
I have some trauma.
Yeah.
I have attachments with my dad or my mother from whatever. This is what happens when you don't provide this to me. I start feeling like I'm not wanted or useless. I'm not saying that's your intention.
Right.
That's how I feel.
Right.
And then you let that person, it's kind of like a boundary, decide what they want to do with that information.
Absolutely.
And if their behavior is not consistent with what you need, then you simply say it. And I try to, I'm a Virgo, so I can remove my emotions, checklist this out, are you good on paper, right? But, I can check out emotionally too
Yeah.
and understand that this is something I want to be in. I choose to be in a relationship, right? And so for me, it's really about communication. If I find, I have worked in therapy on seeking approval, but it generally is not in relationships. It's with bosses, specifically women bosses. I am constantly seeking their approval. And that has to do with my mother issue, right?
Yeah.
And so my therapist has been really good about saying, let's dive deeper. Why do you feel like you need her, affirmation? And it gets back down to how I feel about myself and doing that work and remembering that my relationship with my mother has nothing to do. It's just a little red flag that pops up and I need to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Remember where it comes from.
Yeah.
It's probably not about our situation.
Right.
And keeping that in the forefront. So that's how I felt about your
Yeah.
particular question.
I think that from the perspective of being on the other side, I do think communication is important. I do think that having the conversation to say, this is what I need, this is how I operate, this is how I move, and these are the expectations in terms of dating. And I think as long as you can lay that out and say, hey, just so you know, these are some of the things that I would like, from time to time, I can remind you if you're open and willing to have that experience with me. But to just go into a relationship and expect someone's going to love you the way that you want to be loved I think it's a disservice. If someone truly loves you, they should be willing to grow alongside your healing.
Okay. I will start and I'll try to be brief.
Okay.
I've been married 19 years.
Okay.
And when we met, we were 16. So we had to grow up together.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
We are in different places.
Yeah.
I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
He's a man. We're the same age. So you add in, I matured faster. All of my trauma really exponentially expedited my growth as a person. And I've been in therapy my entire life. We're still married. So do I think that it's necessary that he agreed to come along my journey of growth? No. But if I outgrow him enough and it's not working for me, I have the freedom to leave and have had to for a short duration of time during our marriage, had to leave. And so it's not a prerequisite. You have to, for me, I had to take inventory of how much growth does he need to have. Now, he did grow. We've been in therapy, couples therapy, 3 different times in our 20-year stint, right? So he was willing to do the work. And I think that was really important to me. Had he not done that, we probably I wouldn't be sitting here with a band on my finger, right? So, but the level of growth, I would not say it's equal or equitable.
Yeah.
Because of the trauma that he sustained as a child that he does not want to revisit, that would get him to be on the same growth trajectory as me, it would be unwise of me to think that he would do that.
Yeah.
And unwise of me to make that a prerequisite to be in our relationship.
Yeah.
So that's how I'll start that question.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
I kind of add to it. My parents have been married for 27 years. My stepmother and my father. And they were married at a very young age and similar situation. I remember a mom calling me. She was like, look, I love your daddy, but it's just not working, and it's going back to the trauma. He's dealt with a lot. My grandfather had Lou Gehrig's disease. My uncle was shot and killed so those things. And then you're in the military. You also got a crazy baby mama, my biological mother. So I've seen the ebbs and flows of what their relationship looked like, but also there was a point where they separated, and it was a thing of my dad had to be willing to do the work. And I think even having that example of, okay, hey, we can be together for a long time and it may just not be working and you're not happy, but you can still love each other. And then my father, he understood and he realized he had to do the work. The childhood traumas part, and then going back to what you said earlier about attachments, that's the part that oftentimes we don't take into consideration. You can only run, but for so long, it's going to always come up. So you have to take the time to, be willing to do that work. So having seen that example, my parents are still together, and to see they work, but they had to go back to dating again. What does it look like to date? Because you're a different person. I'm engaged right now, and I've known my fiance for 8 years. We were friends. When we first met, we were both married separately to different people. And so it's a thing of like, I'm trying to get to know who you are now in this iteration. Because, if you don't grow, you die. And so I want to be able to know you in each iteration and every, as you discover new things about you, I want to discover that. And I feel like if you keep that discovery aspect both in your own individual life as well as with your partner, then that's where that growing together aspect, happens.
Rachel, before I comment on what you said, Rachel, something you had said reminded me of something, and that is capacity. I think that trying to grow along someone who is on their journey looks different for each person. And sometimes you have folks that are a little bit more equipped. They're a little bit more proactive. Maybe their emotional intelligence is a little further along. And with that superpower, it gives them the ability to do the work deeper, feel it deeper, have more of a long-lasting impact, maybe even have more of a motivation to want to come out on the other side. When other people, they can only go as deep as they can go within themselves. They can only meet you as much as they can meet themselves. And some people are terrified to look in the mirror and have those conversations, or terrified to unpack things that happened to them when they were a child and they didn't receive the emotional needs that was required for that time. And so I think it can be really, really unfortunate when you're with someone that you truly love, and they may love you, but they simply are in their own way, and they don't have the capacity to go as deep or as far as it would require for them to show up for you. But everyone has a timeline. And, a lot of times if people are persistent, they'll eventually reach that place. But it comes down to, are you willing to wait that long for your partner to show up? And Chris, I think something that you had said as well, I think sometimes we do run away from ourselves. I think we run away from that tension and stress that's been in our back for years, or a conversation we know we need to have with ourselves that we're just avoiding and pushing off. But one thing that I feel like I have learned in conversations and meeting people is that regardless of where you go, or how far you run, or how fast you run, it catches up with you. It'll catch up with you in a conversation. where you're not even thinking about it. It'll catch up with you in the middle of a presentation at work. It'll catch up with you when you're meeting someone new. And so I think the more that we run, you just delay the inevitable and you make the work have to last a little bit longer than it needs to be.
Isn't there a saying though, like wherever you go, there you are?
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't heard that, but I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think of it as changing jobs. Oh, I don't like this environment, so I go.
Yep.
Oh, I don't like these people, so I go. But really, if you took a deep look, it's actually you,
Yep.
and you carry that
Yeah.
around.
Yep.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Yes.
My mom always says, "You follow you."
Yeah.
So if you don't,
Yeah.
if you don't fix the issues that you're dealing with, they're just going to follow you around until
Yep.
you choose to address them.
Yeah. And I just want to say too, like, I've kind of gotten to a point in my own healing journey where I've kind of just said, like, anything that comes up, I am like completely I'm completely let go, right? I've got no tension or anything. Like, I'm not afraid of anything that comes up. If my partner were to say, like, hey, I'm noticing you're, being clingy, or I'm noticing that you have insecurity here, or I'm noticing, like, when you are talking about your parents or your family, like, this is what's coming up for you. People can point things out to me. I'm actually become very, like, open to receiving that information and just going, having some level of discernment, and then saying, that does hit. What can I do to make a new choice in that situation? What's something that I'm going to put that in the back burner and bring that up with my therapist, because it's a therapist conversation, not a friend conversation, right? Because sometimes we think our friends are our therapists, and that's not true. However, they see us all the time, and sometimes in places our therapist does not see us in. So it is good if they do provide some level of feedback or information to use that, but go to your therapist with it. But I say that to say, I think I've really inspired my partner a lot. While I don't think that there's someone who may ever go to therapy or really look at anything that maybe they have had in their past that they have not brought up, I think because they see the way that I am so open and how much growth I've had and how much it's impacted me and how it impacts our relationship, that they're inspired to do that work themselves. And it's not me saying, well, if you don't change, or if you don't fix things, or if you don't work on your trauma or whatever, then we can't be together. It's, I think, I'm just taking the lead in that part of our relationship. And I think that in relationships, especially healthy relationships, sometimes we take the lead in different areas. And sometimes a lot of the times, emotional and internal stuff is women taking the lead. And sometimes in other areas, men are taking the lead, or what have you. So, yeah.
I think something you said, Raymond, about discernment. I've been married for so long. Sometimes it's hard to take myself out of the marriage, right? But if I were dating, it comes down to discernment of person that you're engaging with. And so, like, if I'm doing my adequate work in vetting you out and you're vetting me, like, hopefully I'm aware that you're never going to address any of your situations. You're not interested in growth, because it is really hard to inspire someone who's not inspirable.
Yes.
And so I don't want to
Absolutely.
drag you along, because I don't have the capacity to drag heavy weight. And you're gonna be drug kicking and screaming, and no one's gonna be happy in this situation.
Yeah.
So I just we need to cut our losses, like, earlier
Yeah.
in that process,
Yep.
where it's like, hey, this is why taking inventory of what you need, your non-negotiables, is really important.
Yeah.
And then holding a boundary for yourself when those things get crossed.
Absolutely.
Then you let go.
Absolutely.
I just want to add something to that.
Yeah.
There's somebody that I was dating, and on paper, everything was right. But if you cannot be honest when you go back home, and you cannot be truthful for who you are, and it's fine. I don't know. I could say it without, like, their father didn't know that they weren't actually their child, and their mother had continued to make them lie about it. You can never fully be yourself, so you are not going to be able to be fully yourself in this relationship.
Yeah.
And that's something that I knew that person had to do. And if they could not, then we were never going to be able to go anywhere. And they didn't realize how, because they've had to lie and keep that part, that they were two different people. And they just gotten so used to be two different people. They'd be this person around a group of friends, and then this person back at home, and it's just like, because they have gotten so used to like code switching, going back to the discernment, it's just like, hey, we got to cut it off. You don't see where this is at, and until you can be honest with yourself, and that's gonna always, because that's foundational, and that's a big foundational thing. And so it's just, hey, you know, you're a great person, but you got some work that you have to do. And I hope that, you know, your mother allows you to also be able to do that so that you can be your full self, because you've never been able to do that and knowing that.
Is there such a thing as the right person at the wrong time?
Yes. I can say that without a shadow of a doubt. My fiance and I met her now 9 years ago. We were working at an event, and I was at the time separated from my ex-wife. And so I was sitting there, we were talking for like 30 minutes, and I went and told a friend, I was like, man, I'm in love. I don't know who this woman is, but she is the one. Like, oh, that's my best friend and she's married. Now I was like, okay. So, you know, that was very interesting. And then we had a lot of mutual friends, you know, throughout that community. And I never once crossed the line. She never once crossed the line. You know, she owns a big wellness spa, so different women I've dated sent there and everything else. And, you know, fast forward 3 years ago, you know, her and her ex-husband, they decided to call it quits. And it was interesting. A friend of mine said, you know, I had this vision that there was somebody, they were madly in love with you, known each other forever. And I'm trying to think, like, who in the world is this? And then the fact that it ended up being her. And we were just in that space where, okay, we were both single. And also another thing, I'm trans. So she has seen me transition, you know, and has seen all those different aspects of my life. And be it for us to have that friendship, that's also, I appreciate that, because that's something we can always go back to. I don't have to question, oh, well, is she with me because of this or with me because of that? Like, we have that foundation. And again, if someone would have told me, this woman that I fell in love with 9 years ago, that we would now be engaged, I would not believe you. But it's just interesting. I still continue to do the work, because even through my, you know, my divorce and everything else, you know, there was still work that had to be done. And, you know, I don't speak to everybody's transition, everything else. I already knew who I was before I transitioned. The external part is the last part. And that's something I also encourage a lot of people that they want to transition. Going back to what you said, you can switch jobs, but if you don't internally realize you are the deciding factor, you know, you're going to continue just to run into the same situation or bring the same situation up over and over again. So, you know, it's, you know, we're here now, you know, we're very much happily engaged. So then, and again, if you asked me this like 8 years ago, I'd probably been like, no, that just happens in the movies, just TV stuff.
And I think there are two versions of that too, right?
Okay.
So, and I think I'm the only single person on the panel here, but, oh, well, Raymond, but I think that so much of the dating world really is timing and dumb luck. It's meeting someone out in the world, in this simulation we're all living in, and you happen to be in the same place in your life at the same time. So I think there's two different situations in that, which is, one is circumstantial. So whether you're married, engaged, you met at a time when maybe someone's moving. Hey, I'm only going to be here for 2 more months. Why would we start something? I'm leaving to go work at a job, you know, whatever the case may be. That's circumstantial. And then there's the emotional component of it, where it's like, hey, I just got out of a relationship. I'm not emotionally ready to be with someone right now. And sometimes it takes dating that person, or just going, you know what, maybe this person's worth trying with, and then getting into it and realizing I need to back the truck up because I'm not ready for this. So I think there's two levels to that, right? There's circumstances of where we are in our lives. Obviously, to your point, you know, you met this person when they're married, so they're not emotionally available. They're not available to do those things. And then there's also, well, I am single and I am able to date you technically, but maybe I'm not ready, or, you know, we discover through starting to see each other that, hey, maybe we need to do some work before we dive deeper. To Rachel's point, I think a lot of that is figuring that out in the beginning. Are we on the same page? Are we in the same place in our lives? I think as you get older, there are other elements that you're dealing with, whether that's divorce or kids. There's things you're bringing into that change things. So I think there's two two separate stories that are going on there.
Yeah, and I'm just going to speak to it from an interesting perspective as well. So my partner we have an age gap relationship. My partner is about 10 years younger than me. And I find obviously that if I had met him a year later, like a year earlier or 2 years earlier, he would have been a completely different person. And there's a lot, because he's younger, that has changed in his life. And I think even his type, like, I don't think we've talked about this. Like, if I was in college at the same time as him, would we have dated? Would we have like been together? And, you know, he was like, you know, frat boy. And I was like the, you know, nerdy, like leadership, like in all of the clubs and taking 6 classes and stuff like that. And I never drank alcohol and I was never partying. Right. And so like we probably would have never actually gotten together. But now we're in both places in our lives with our careers. We have the same vision for the life for our future. And I think that, you know, that's how we're able to, you know, be. So I do think that right place, right time sort of situation as well. But I think don't lose hope in those situations. I think your story is a perfect example. And I think in what you shared as well, I think sometimes we can also just have friendship be the foundation until that comes to be, without expectation of it needing to turn into something. But if you're like, I see a spark there, I see something there, but it's just not the right time. Well, what kind of relationship can I have as a foundation that can maybe allow that little seed to grow into something if I feel like there's something there and we both are agreeing on that?
Yeah.
I don't have anything to contribute, but Chris, all I could think about is your wife saying, "Oh, you're Chris's girl? Okay. Oh, you're Chris's girl? Okay. Oh, you're Chris's girl?" And then you're like, "Chris is now my man."
Yeah.
I mean, she would probably agree with you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So thank you all for participating in this part of the conversation. This is part 1 of the conversation series. So continue to like, follow, and subscribe for part 2 coming here soon. Thanks.